I'm here for any related items.
They're all related, Randy. That's what you learned.
Okay, all right.
You're online.
Thank you, Chris. All right. With apologies for not having my video on currently, guys. I am in the midst of just toggling back and forth between the agenda and everything on my phone, just because the Wi-Fi here is pretty poor. So I would like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting of Tuesday, February 1st, 2022. It is 1:02 p.m. and we are live on a digital platform. We have 4 items on today's agenda and we will be addressing them in order. But first, allow me to call the roll. Present today from Williamsport City Council, we have myself, the chair, Liz Mealy, Randy Allison, and Eric Biter, as well as Council President Adam Yoder on the line. I see Adam Winder, you'll apologize, but I'm assuming at least Scott Livermore is in there with you. And then in terms of other folks that we have here on the, we have Molly Steele Shrimp from HR. We have the city clerk, Janice Frank. We have Joe Pavlock. We have Kayla Drummond. We have John Sander. And I think that's about everybody on here right now, unless there's anyone else in the room over there at RVT. Okay, the first item on today's agenda is a transfer ordinance, number 6, first reading. Mr. Pavlock, would you like to take that one?
Sure. This is a transfer ordinance for 2021. It's basically in order to get accounts in line with what bills are still outstanding for the year. So with that being said, we were able to, for the most part, shift money within departments, within the individual departments, to cover each department's individual needs. One of the other things that was included in this was something we stumbled upon in 2021 related to the additional debt service that the general fund required to take on. So that's also included in the attached numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Pavlock. Would you like to go over for us specifically where we pulled the debt service from in the budget?
I can't be specific. When I was going through, I was trying to get individual department needs, and then I had a total that was necessary for the additional debt. So I went through based on where departments were at and what their budgets were, and what was known that they're spending to come out with where I could pull that. You'll see the big chunk of it will come from additional business privilege taxes that were brought in. So that's a big chunk of it, but the remainder came throughout the various departments. We were able to see savings.
That must have been a yeoman's job, Mr. Pavlock. Looks like this is kind of a pain in the butt. Anyway, Mr. Biter, Mr. Allison, do you have any questions on the transfer ordinance?
No, I don't on this one, since we don't.
Nor do I.
Have the some of the specifics yet.
Which specifics are you referring to, Mr. Allison?
Just
Randy?
The detail Joe said they don't have.
Yeah.
No, I mean, everything in here balances out, so I'm not sure.
Oh, I understand that.
I think what Joe's getting at is he took like $1,000 here and $10,000 there and $5,000 over here, right, Joe?
Yeah, I went through and identified the needs of where money needed to go.
Right.
Tried to find the money for each department within their own department, and then related to the debt, went through all departments to pull out where there was still enough money to pull from.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So this is all the detail we're likely to wind up with from the sounds of it. But we did cover all of our expenses, and by and large, we covered them within the departments within which they were incurred. Correct? Or were there any exceptions to that, with the exception of the debt service?
There may have been some minor things, but for the most part, departments were able to cover their own needs for the year,
Okay.
just shifting between different accounts.
Okay, that's a good start, I guess. Well, Eric and Randy, if you don't have any further questions, I guess I'd take a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion. We pass it to the full body of council with a positive recommendation.
And I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. It looks pretty cut and dry, but man, there's a lot of stuff on here.
Well, trying to find that amount of money, I just had to pull from a number of lines. So, yep, but we got there.
Okay, yeah. I feel
Thanks,
as though
Joe.
the one further question I'd have is that I feel as though we don't necessarily engage in this at year end, most budget years. Why was this year so exceptional in terms of needing to move so much money around? Was it just the debt service that was the chunk of it that really required a lot of movement, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it. Thanks, Joe. All right, then moving on from this item, the next item on our agenda, sorry guys, is number 2, an ordinance amending part 1 of the codified ordinances of the city of Williamsport, first reading. Adam Yoder, I understand that you'll be taking this. John Mackey is listed as well on the agenda.
Yeah, certainly. So part of this was driven by John in our first meeting, which is why I have him as a co-sponsor. But nonetheless, I can handle it for him. So what you have in front of you, this updates 2 different pieces, essentially, of the rules of procedure and the process of how we conduct meetings, but also, excuse me, but also how we get public engagement. So the first part in there, how we conduct meetings, this updates our ordinance to incorporate formally moving forward the formal ability to conduct meetings remotely. So over the past 2 years, we have certainly lived in very odd and uncommon times and have needed to be remote. And I think what we have found is there are times when it's certainly useful and advantageous. But given that we are on the backside of the pandemic, I think we want to ensure we incorporate that. Currently, as it stands, for us to hold a voting meeting, we have to be in person. And so what this does is updates that mechanism that we can hold meetings remotely and vote. We can certainly have discussion and change how that's deemed or when that's deemed appropriate. What I did as a starting point for discussion was just put it on council president to make that determination when that happens. And the reason for that, the thought process was really, you got a single point person that if it needs to happen, it can be done quickly and efficiently. Rather than having to hold a quick special meeting, gather everybody together and take a vote to switch. We ran into that about 2 years ago when the pandemic started. We had to, call the emergency order and declare state of emergency, what have you. And I just thought that might be more efficient or what have you. But again, it's a starting point, certainly for discussion, and we can change that. So that's the first part. The second part was really driven by John Mackey. And what this does is it changes both the mechanism and the timeline on when we can bring people for limited courtesy to the floor. So that's one of 2 mechanisms that we have for holding, for incorporating public feedback directly into our council meetings. And this is the opportunity at the beginning of the meeting before we deliberate on anything for the public to comment on anything in the agenda. With our current rules of procedure, that request has to be submitted Wednesday, I believe, by 3 p.m. And it gets a little clunky at times because of the way that our agenda is and the timeline of when our agenda is finalized. There's a minimal window where the final agenda is published, and we have an opportunity for people to submit a request for a comment under limited courtesy of floor. So what this does is it creates a second mechanism, and it enables people to sign up for courtesy of the floor up into the beginning of the council meeting. But what it does not change is the original procedure. So there's multiple ways that people can get on courtesy of the floor, but it also doesn't change how many we're able to have and the time limit. So that gives us an ability to continue to manage it as we have. It just simply expands access to try to hopefully spur more public participation in meetings. And again, that was really a thought and spurred by Councilman Mackey. So it's a starting point to flush that out as well. So that's a long-winded answer to what this is. I'll be here to answer any questions or participate in any dialogue.
Got it. I think, I mean, Mr. Biter, do you have any comments?
No, I think it's a good thing that we allow easier participation for the public. So I appreciate what John and Adam have done with that.
Randy, comments, questions?
Just one correction. That limited courtesy of the floor is actually under 111.02.
Oh, did I get the number wrong?
You
Yeah.
have them as 111.01.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, my bad. So we'll have to change that.
Yeah, that's under,
Yeah.
this one's under procedural rules and regulations. Yeah,
Yeah.
the only, it just needs managed, that's all, since they have up until the meeting starts to, and just that they're clear that they have to be addressing an agenda item. I think people are gonna have problems with that at first, so some way to manage that.
Yeah, no, I would agree. You know, and I think, I mean, I think the best way to do that is as we, if and as we get, I think, more participation through an updated mechanism, I think it's just making sure we communicate that up front. I mean, it's just that educational barrier that I think you're talking about, Randy, and I would completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
Adam, I would actually suggest if we're having a sign-up sheet, that one of the sign-up sheet should be which agenda item the comment pertains to.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Because honestly, if you really, I'd have to go back and look at the ordinance and the rules. I don't have it up in front of me right now, but I do believe that when we get requests for courtesy of the floor, they need to note which agenda item it is, and they
Right.
also need to articulate that when they start to speak. I think that's absolutely a good idea. And I think that's a good way, Liz, to manage that as well. So good call.
Right. So if that's how we're constructing the sign-up sheet, that begins to eliminate the issue. The other thing that I would think is that probably, regardless of the order in which people have signed up for courtesy of the floor, we should hear courtesy of the floor predicated on subject matter. Do you know what I'm saying?
I don't. Could you elaborate more, please?
If we have 10 applicants to speak for limited courtesy of the floor,
Mhm.
all of those applicants who are speaking on agenda item 6 should speak in the same time frame. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So rather than, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Rather than in the order in which they applied to speak, once they've gotten the ability to speak, they speak in the order of the agenda items they're addressing.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that makes sense. That certainly makes sense.
I guess I just think that gives us a double blind against having somebody get up and be like, what do you mean I have to talk about something on the agenda? You know what I mean?
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, and that's been a longstanding rule. I mean, I'd have to go back again and look at when this was originally codified, but I think this goes back to like the early 70s when we became a third class optional charter city. I mean, that's been in place for decades. You know, so I agree.
It's a good rule to have in place.
Yes.
Because the thing is, while I don't have any issue with public comment in a meeting, there are a number of people who attend city council meetings because they have items on the agenda. And to ask all of those people to sit through, you know, public speech just about the general state of the city at the beginning of the meeting seems a little egregious. Public speech related to agenda items, I think, is perfectly acceptable. But anyone who with just a general airing of grievances to conduct, I think, can wait till the end of the meeting. That's why I think it's important, right?
Yeah. I would agree with that. And I think that I don't know this for sure. I think that was the original intent of how both of these mechanisms that we have in place now were structured. I think that was the original intent, and I would agree with that completely.
Right. Okay. The only other questions I had, I might suggest in the first item that we
Okay.
create, much in the way that we have elsewhere. It seems like it should be both telephonically and digitally.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I mean, by and large, we're holding our meetings digitally now when we're not holding them in council chambers. And then it would seem like we would want to have a mechanism where, like by perhaps a telephonic vote of other members of council, we could declare. The only reason that I'm putting that out there is I think we might as well create the opportunity for ourselves if, I don't know, Adam, you're in Bermuda, right?
Yep. I get you.
And there's some sort of extreme weather event, like what's supposed to happen this Thursday, for instance, and the other members of council decide that it is not necessarily safe for them to travel to the agreed upon meeting place, but you're in Bermuda and nobody wants to bug you to get you to move the meeting, or they can't get in touch with you, period, right? It just seems like we should have some other sort of mechanism for other members of council making the decision to hold the meeting remotely. That's not such that they can override the authority of the president. It's simply in the absence of the president for some reason.
Yeah. No,
there's still a mechanism.
yeah. No, I get you. And again, I mean, I don't know that what is written today is perfect. It's a starting point. That's not a terrible idea by any means. We can certainly think about language of what that would look like for Thursday for first reading, but I think I agree with that as well. So that's not a bad idea. And the telephonic verbiage, I think in my head, I think digital captures is caught within that. That was literally just mimicking the sunshine law.
Right. Well, and that's fine. I don't know, legally speaking, what the definition of telephonically is.
Yeah.
And I would guess that it's called out somewhere in the sunshine law, correct?
I believe so. I'll circle back just to clarify that point with Norm, but
yeah.
I believe we're covered, but that's a good question, and we'll get that clarified.
And I would also, as you and I discussed a couple of weeks ago, advocate for the potential for individual members to participate telephonically or however, only because you may find yourself in a position once again where you can't achieve a quorum at a council meeting. So it wouldn't necessarily be under just any circumstance willy-nilly, but I think that you probably want to allow for participation both in a public forum and digitally in case we would need that to achieve a quorum in a meeting.
Yeah. That's unprofessional to roll out with. I agree with, I think, the sentiment. I don't know mechanism wise how that works.
I don't know what it looks like either, but
that's another good point.
We have wound up only a handful of times in my career on council, but nonetheless a handful of times wondering whether or not we're going to have enough members to attend a meeting to conduct the meeting. And when there's important business to deal with, that's an issue, right?
Correct. Yeah. I have a terrible habit of that.
Yeah.
The balancing act that I'm running through my head is I would agree with that. We need it as I think a procedural safety mechanism, but the counter to that is I don't know what you all think, but I've experienced hybrid, in-person, virtual, professionally, and most recently have experienced it on both ends with city council. And I'm not convinced yet that is a good continual structure. I think either or is much more effective. So I would want to make sure we balance that when putting it together. But I would agree with your sentiment, Ms. Mealy.
I mean, I think you could definitely, I'm not sure, is that excruciating circumstances? Is that a legal term?
Probably.
okay, well, whatever the proper, that the excruciating struck me as kind of a strange word, but whatever the proper terminology is, I would
Yeah,
suggest it
it's
to
not so
basically
good.
be in that situation. In a situation under which the meeting would not be able to be conducted, due to lack of a quorum, members, individual members are permitted to participate, telephonically or digitally as necessary. I mean, like I said, that's up a bit for discussion. I agree with you that I thought that last Thursday's meeting, when I briefly attended digitally, it made a bit of a jerk of myself. And when you attended the entire time digitally, it was weird.
Yeah, it was very weird. I would agree. And conversely, I mean, I'm trying to remember when. I think it was last year we had, well, I mean, even beginning of this year, we had, for good reason, people in quarantine and were participating remotely while we were all in person. It was weird on both ends. I would agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, and I think participation maybe to me is more the goal than weirdness or lack of weirdness, but we would perhaps have to sort of let ourselves feel our way out. I do like the option that I exercised last Thursday of listening to the meeting and participating without voting.
Yeah.
Because at least if for some reason, as is often the case with me in my line of work, especially now that we've moved our meeting time earlier, if I cannot be precisely timely, it's nice to be able to understand what's going on in my absence. But anyway, I guess I'm trying to think through all the eventualities, and my major concern is that we would wind up in a situation. I mean, I suppose what could happen is the council member could declare the council president or individual member, a vote of all the members of council could declare the entire meeting remote in the eventuality of us not being able to achieve a quorum with an in-person meeting.
Yeah.
So perhaps that eliminates that concern there. I don't know. Anyway, I think we should have perhaps a little more discussion about not necessarily that being common practice, but whether or not we want to permit individual members, if they're on vacation or something like that, and yet passionate about an issue, to attend a meeting virtually or not. And then also, I think we should look for another mechanism by which we can declare meetings remote, just in case the council president is not for some reason reachable.
Yeah. No.
And I would just want to be sure that telephonically does in fact now cover all sorts of virtual attendance that we might engage in. And I'm assuming, yeah, like I said, excruciating is a very weird word.
I thought extenuating might be good in there.
Yeah, or
extraordinary.
Yeah, extraordinary. It seems maybe a little bit more like what I would think of as the term, but is that Norm's word, Adam? Because there might be some legal.
No, that was mine. So
okay.
I'll clarify that.
Okay, but anyway, but in general, I'm glad to see that we're doing this. For some reason, I had recollected that I thought we took care of this at the beginning of the pandemic, but if we hadn't, I think it's clearly time that we bring ourselves a bit more into line with the requirements of the Sunshine Law rather than the requirements of a somewhat antiquated city ordinance at this point.
Yeah, certainly. And I agree. I was of the impression we did also. And to clarify, the issue isn't the Sunshine Law. The issue is our ordinance specifically.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that we should, and perhaps we want to add some sort of codicil that says that we will follow the Sunshine Law. I mean, I know that you put that in there, but is there any way to basically say that our requirements change if there's something about the Sunshine Law that requires them to change?
I think that the language in there covers that, but I can clarify that as well. I didn't think about that, and that's a very good thought. So,
but I'm just trying to think of future meetings and what they look like. Oh, actually, our is the Trade and Transit Center now city council? Is that regarded as city council chambers, the Michael Ross room?
You mean
Yeah,
legally? I think so, because,
Okay, it just says all meetings will be held in city council chambers in City Hall.
oh, yeah.
And given
And
that that's a little bit in
Right,
flux
yeah.
right now, I wasn't sure whether we wanted to leave, whether we wanted, what we wanted to do with that language.
well, in my mind, when we pass the resolution codifying the dates that we meet, and we note in there that it's Trade and Transit 2.
Mhm.
So in my mind, I'm thinking that taking that legislative action makes that city council chambers, but we can clarify that also.
Maybe we want to just delete in City Hall. Adam, from
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, we can clarify that. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
Just saying, I mean, because regardless of, I mean, if we had to codify one single structure as City Hall right now, my guess is it would be Trade and Transit 1. Right? But technically speaking, City Hall exists as a little bit of like almost like a diaspora right now or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, so maybe we just want to, city council chambers are where they are regardless of the literal physical location of City Hall.
So, and the sentence after that, I mean, the one sentence says all meetings will be held in city council chambers. Then the sentence after that says meetings may occasionally be held at other locations. It doesn't specify whether they're regular, that they're connected to that other sentence.
Well, how about,
Do you
so
think
actually,
satellite meetings at other venues for the public? I mean, that's been done before.
well, like the Recreation Commission meets elsewhere,
Yeah.
but this
Or
is
the council
dealing with-
would occasionally have a meeting in a different section of town. I mean,
yeah.
is that what that's in there for?
That was in there originally. When I read through it,
Yeah.
I
Oh.
thought that it made sense. All that I did
Yeah.
was updated the telephonically
Right.
deemed by council
Yeah,
president.
down,
That's all
come
that
on
I
down.
updated as a starting
Got it.
point.
Okay. If we want to clean up the language, it would be my suggestion that it just reads, all meetings will be held in city council chambers unless another location has been previously approved by the majority of council and advertised,
That sounds good.
right? If you want to make it clearer, that seems like the language you want. Yeah. I'm just looking here, sorry. Scheduled for the, okay. Do we, yeah, I don't think we want to deal with. I mean, you could theoretically do the virtual meeting thing, but also by the request of 2 members as the special meeting thing is, Adam. But I don't know that that's how we want to do it, but just putting that out there. Okay. Yeah, I think as far as the verbiage there, those are my questions and concerns. We've got 2 readings to sort them out, and I think that this
Yeah.
is, generally speaking, a much needed. So if I came across as being critical, it's not exactly that, Adam. It seems as though so often we undertake changes and say, well, if this doesn't work, we can get back to it later. But then there's no telling if we're going to get back to it. As long as we've got 2 readings, I would advocate for getting it as close to right as we think we can.
Well, I would agree with that. And I mean, I will fully admit, I don't think of everything number 1 and number 2, frankly, that's the part of this, is vetting that out and getting other perspective, because this is not perfect by any means. And singularly, I won't make it perfect. You won't make it perfect. None of us will. We make it better together. So, and it's perfectly fine and welcomed. So
No,
absolutely.
I think it's solid practice of pretty much never meeting with anyone on any sort of business related to council without at least another council member present, because I don't think of everything. So
Absolutely.
it's always better to like have another brain in the room.
Yep.
But anyway, yeah. So why don't we, if you want to follow up with me at all, we could talk about that later on this week before Thursday night. On that topic, Adam, I think I'd encouraged you in a separate email to potentially consider moving Thursday night's meeting virtual. I don't know if you want to do that. I understand the sort of legal double blind we're in there, but they are calling for 3 to 5 inches of snow and ice on Thursday evening. And I don't know how that's going to impact our attendance there. But so just putting that out there too.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's fine. I'll take a look at it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't, and maybe it won't materialize. I'm not suggesting we make that decision now. I'm just
Yeah,
saying
nice. I understand.
maybe it could be something, yeah, that we think about. But anyway, okay. Are there any other questions on this from members of the Finance Committee? Anyone else who's still present in the meeting? Hearing none, I would take a motion. Randy or
I
Eric,
would like
one of the two. Okay.
I was going to give it,
I'd like to make a motion to give us a positive recommendation and send it on to the full body council
I'll second that.
with the changes that we spoke of.
Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you remembering that. You'll second that, Randy?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry, Eric. Every once in a while, there's that awkward silence because nobody wants to forward it and nobody knows what to do with it.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, we're gonna have one of those things. Like, why didn't we ask more questions? It's a standoff.
This whole committee thing is still so very new. This is only my third committee meeting.
I know. No. I was just that was why I was suddenly like, oh my God, Randy and Eric are just gonna let this thing die for a lack of emotion. Nobody let me know.
That's right.
We just
Sorry,
wanted to
Adam.
make you sweat a little bit, Liz.
Hey, I've been there. It's all good.
My we're supposed to remove something from the table and nobody makes the motion and we just all stare at each other like, I'm not doing it. Are you doing it? That the joy of that particular moment has really been eliminated by virtual meetings. The joy and awkwardness. Okay. All right. Moving on to the next item on the agenda.
Thanks, Al.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for presenting that. And thanks for taking it on. We
Yeah, no
appreciate
worries.
it. Okay. Item number 3, a resolution awarding the construction services for 2021 street paving project to Big Rock Paving Incorporated. John Sanders?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. This is a resolution awarding this year's paving contract to Big Rock Paving. I have to read some bids out loud, so bear with me a minute. We received 6 bids on the project, and they are Big Rock Paving, $856,691.85. Glen L. Hawbaker, $971,208.53. HRI, $1,017,902.40. M&J Excavation, $1,100,684. Catelius, $1,186,065.10. And New Enterprise, $1,190,296.50. Big Rock Paving is the lowest responsive bidder for the project. This was reviewed by Austin, and they will get awarded the project.
Okay.
Any questions?
Randy, Eric?
I just said, just a couple. On their bid, bear with me a moment here. 007 and 008.
Yeah.
The inlets, I think those are for storm drains, 007. And the adjustment to manholes.
Yeah.
They seemed a lot extraordinarily lower than the other
Yeah.
bids.
I don't know why. I can't really ask
know-
them. Can't
Yeah,
really- Because that'd be collusion, so I can't really ask them
well,
why.
I just assume they have some loss leaders in their group usually, and then they make it up on another one, hoping that maybe they hit the sweet spots all the way around. So, but
I could surmise them possibly having those items in stock and not having to buy them, so that could be.
okay, stuff
Yeah.
like that. Yeah.
Stuff like
Yeah,
that.
I just wondered what, possibly. And the 004, the concrete curbs and sidewalks, do they sub that out or do they do that?
Yeah, they typically do. Let me see here. 2 years ago, Big Rock was awarded the project. They subbed out the concrete work to a large concrete outfit subcontractor out of Pittsburgh, did a good job. Last year, Hawbaker was our contractor and they subbed their work out to Walnut Construction. They have yet to tell me exactly who they're going to utilize, but usually they do sub out their concrete work, correct?
Okay. Yeah, I think, and the addendums, the two are down below. I saw the ones on the second addendum. The first one's already done then, correct?
So the addendums are items that change the contractor and advertisement.
Right.
So for instance, there was one additional intersection that the water authority wanted me to put on. That's addendum number 2, that added 407 square yards of paving. Addendum 1 was a requirement by the codes folks that wanted a date every single day the paving contractor paves the street. They want the date that it was paved, and that was for their use.
Oh, that's why the 2021
was.
date. was
Yeah.
in there. Yeah, okay.
So I issue these addenda electronically, and then I also put a record of it right on the
Yeah.
bid listing, so everyone knows.
In the paving of Flock Place, that's about 3 blocks, right? I think. That's actually basically an alley, correct?
It is an alley, yes.
Yeah.
Flock Place, what page is that on?
It's between Almond and Penn.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to see what page it's on. I'm trying to look at the quantity to see. Yeah, it's a.
First page.
It's a lesser quantity. Well, actually, it's quite long. It's 10 by 675, 10 foot wide by 1,675 foot long. So it's relatively sizable.
Yeah. Okay, and I think I've been down there and it is in bad shape, but I was really glad to see that section of Hollywood Circle and Hawthorne Avenue, those sides are getting done. And that's going to make everything nice and smooth there. So
Yep.
Those are the only questions I had.
Mhm. Okay. Thanks, Randy. And obviously, I remember Big Rock Paving was new to us a couple of years ago, Mr. Sander, but we felt like they did a good job with the contract that we awarded to them a couple of years ago, correct? I think that would have been right after you.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Liz.
I was going to say, I think that would have been pretty much right after you signed on with us, but hoping that you.
I may be looking to utilize the services of a construction inspector. Every other municipality around us and every other one in general, I guess for that matter, utilizes one. I may do that this year. I'm not sure. I'm kind of mulling the decision because our contract for $800,000, $900,000 that we're going to soon award is right in front of you, but also the UGI piggybacks off this contract as well. They have the opportunity to utilize them, Big Rock, to pay their streets this year, which would basically double this contract amount. Not that we pay it, UGI pays it,
Right.
but
Yeah.
So but it all comes down to the owner of the street, which is the city of Williamsport. So I may hire a construction inspector to kind of keep an eye on the contract.
Got it.
And also, I wanted to add one more item. The concrete work, I'm glad you brought that up, Randy. the concrete work for the city, I am looking to install more current up to state current standard ADA ramps in and around Trade and Transit 1 and 2 buildings, and also around Sills office building over on 3rd Street as well, and a couple other sporadic locations in town as well. So
Well, ADA ramps are always you mean curb
correct.
ramps, right? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
They're always a positive thing. Okay. John, how much money did we set aside in the 2022 budget for paving?
I don't have it
Remember that
in front of me.
number, recollect. I guess what I'm wondering is how this falls within the budget that we had set aside in 2022.
I can pull up a spreadsheet as far as what I was my estimate, but I have to deduct because I have some additions, so I don't have that readily available. I'm thinking it's right around this range. If I'm not mistaken. I don't know if
Joe
Joe
Pavlock, you around here?
Yeah, I don't have the number in front of me either.
Yeah, and I don't either. Could we look into it for Thursday?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that.
Sorry, Joe. I know we hide it all over the budget so that it's a little hard to track down exactly what it is. But I was thinking that we had something close to $1 million in paving this year, but then I was thinking perhaps we had cut that substantially. We usually do a little better than $1 million, and I was thinking that perhaps we'd gone under that in 2022. Just want to make sure, obviously, that we're not authorizing a larger paving project than we allocated money for.
If I'm not mistaken, I think the funds were cut for the 2023 construction. Is that correct? I'm pretty sure that may have been cut in half almost. I'm not sure. But
Well,
this year,
This is
are we operating? Hang on a minute. Maybe I'm just
this
being
is
stupid.
this is the 2021 budget that we're
yeah, this is
operating.
the 2021 budget to be constructed in 22. I
Because I-
believe
Just being stupid. Sorry, guys. But yeah. So yeah, that clarifies. Then in that case, we did have better than $1 million. So we're under budget on that.
I'd have to pull up my spreadsheet, and then I can give me a minute or two. I can probably tell you.
No. I'm just. I guess what I'm wondering in that case, we cut the 2022 budget pretty substantially, to my recollection. But then we won't get there until the beginning of 2023, I guess, at this point. Or are we going to try and let that come?
The 2022 budgeted numbers get actually paved in 2023. That's the,
We cut significantly the 2021 budget coming out of COVID.
Okay.
So
So
that's where all the cuts were coming, and it was going down 1-2 million. So
Okay.
that's where I'm looking. I'll have a number for Thursday.
Right,
Okay.
Joan, if I remember correctly, we increased liquid fuels allocation for the paving in 2021 to help cover what was cut out of the general fund, right?
Well, there was no general fund money in 2021.
Right,
Yeah.
that was cut, and we added more money on the liquid fuel side to cover what would have been in 2021's general fund side.
So we usually get about 300,000 from CDBG,
Uh,
right? And we usually pull in maybe another 3 from liquid fuels, it seems to me.
Yes, I want to say we increased it by 100,000 due to not using any general fund money.
General fund money. But so that would leave us with 700,000 if the general recollection is accurate, unless we were also pulling funding from someplace else.
You also have the county liquid fuels.
Right.
And then if I remember right, Joe, you were using some Act 13 money.
Yeah, we usually use Act 13. Right.
I have the targeted values. So I work with community development and also with Joe Trapalock for budgeting ahead of time. So funding wise, split wise, I have about 417,000 in CDBG and 322,000 in not CDBG funds. So that's how I build my streets list and estimate accordingly. And
Okay,
also-
but the way we're over that budget.
And also another, say again? And also another $72,000 in curb ramps as well. And also another $60,000 for inlets as well. So
Okay. Which should be getting us somewhere close to that 858 number. I'd heard about 750. Yeah, so we should be close to 8. Are you telling me the breakout on the 858 number from Big Rock, or are you telling me what you
no,
have?
no, I'm
Okay.
not telling you, I'm telling you my breakout, city and
So
city.
theoretically, we're sliding in, if we're lucky, almost precisely within the amount of money we had allocated for 2021 street project.
And I can keep an eye on it, and if we're gonna go over, I can remove a street or two or whatever as
Well,
needed.
if you can just, if we can get an answer for Thursday as to how this gels, as to how the final bid numbers gel with what we had allocated, the total amount we had allocated for street paving in 2021, that would be great.
I have it right now.
Okay.
800,000.
871,000 is my total. Where we at on the bid?
Where's the other money from CDBG coming from?
I don't know.
Because I'm looking at their budget right now. It's 400 for streets and 80 for barriers.
Yeah, I have 417. It might be a couple of dollars off here and there, but not off, but.
Yeah.
we
Well,
can
but so if you're
make some
saying 400
adjustments.
streets and 80 for barriers, that's 480, Joe.
Correct. And then 300 from liquid fuels and 24 from county liquid fuels. The
Okay.
total of around 800,000.
Yeah,
And there was no Act 13 money in 2021.
got it. So it seems as though we are going to need to pull a couple of streets off this bid to make the paving project a reality.
I would say no. I mean, there's $1.7 million currently, or gonna be in liquid fuels, so I don't think you should pull any streets.
Okay, well, I'm gonna need a final word on that from the administration for Thursday's meeting, because we obviously can't award a bid when we have less money allocated in the 2021 budget for streets than the lowest bidder, right? So if the administration is choosing to take that money from liquid fuels, I mean, best case scenario, I'd have to, Randy and Eric, I would recommend that we forward this with no recommendation to the full body of council, probably. But the larger issue, I think, becomes, do we want to we would have to execute a transfer ordinance, I'm assuming, Joe, to move that money from liquid fuels into paving?
I've never seen a transfer in liquid fuels, but
Okay,
No, there
So
wouldn't
we
be any
can just take it.
transfer ordinance because it's just a liquid fuels eligible expense. So it would
Got
come
it.
directly from liquid fuels account.
okay. So that doesn't need to be called out in the budget in any way for
No.
2020. Okay. All right, well then, we will need to ascertain that, I think, all the way, like all the way up to Derek, at Thursday's meeting before I would feel comfortable assenting to this, assenting to this contract as is. Because currently what I'm hearing is, unless there's money somewhere that nobody's spotting it, we're $58,000 short of having enough money to pay for this contract in the 2021 budget. So can you guys discuss that amongst the administration between now and Thursday? So we have a clear course of action, and then council can move on it, assuming that there is enough money, or we can ask John Sander to reduce the number of streets in the contract and bring us an amended contract in 2 weeks' time. Does that sound like a reasonable course of action to everybody, or?
I guess if we're slightly over, which there's a lot of factors involved here, but Adam's saying that we have, was it $1 million in liquid fuels that we can use? So that is actually what almost perfectly what liquid fuel money is for paving streets.
I understand that. What I'm saying is, without the administration telling me, including all the way up to the mayor, saying that's what we want to utilize this liquid fuel surplus for, is the 2021 paving project, I'm fine with that. I'm not telling you that we shouldn't do it. I just want it, on record in the meeting. We're not really okay. We can't okay it out of the finance committee anyway. We'll vote on it on Thursday. But I want us to be clear on where all the money is coming from on Thursday. So if you guys can just make sure that Derek's okay with that, and because there are obviously other things we could also use that liquid fuel surplus for. But this is one of them, and that's not a problem to me. I just want to be sure that we're all on board with that in terms of administratively before we okay the contract on Thursday.
Okay.
Because obviously there was a reason why we hadn't set that money aside in 2021 as part of the paving project. Right. So if we're changing our decision on how much money we want to put into paving in 2021, that has to be a top-down administrative decision to my way of thinking.
But I just want to reiterate that. So what you're doing is you're putting out a project out to the public saying, okay, give me your numbers. Yes.
Right.
And then we may or may not, I don't know, have a number that's slightly higher. Anyway, just want to point that out here.
No. I mean, I understand that, John.
Yeah.
I think, I'm assuming that what we would conventionally do is either find extra money if all the bids come in over what we expected them to come in, or cut the project slightly to bring it in line with the amount of money we have to spend.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
So if the option that we're choosing is the finding extra money option, great. But I just want everyone within the administration to be cognizant of the fact that then that money can't go towards something else some other time. Right. So I just want to if you and Adam are on board with it, that's great. So just talk to Derek and make sure that he's also on board with it by Thursday.
Sounds
Right.
good.
And if not, prepare for us, cut the paving project such that it costs $800,000.
Yep.
Right. Randy, Eric, does that sound like the course of action we should be taking?
That's reasonable. I believe we've done that in the past as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I would agree
and I
with
think
that.
we've done both of those things in the past, right? We've cut the project or we've augmented the funding.
Mhm.
I think the question is just, as we know, we have a lot of different things that we could use all kinds of funding for. Is this what we want to use extra liquid fuels funding for or not? I'm not putting a vote in either category. I'm just saying the administration needs to make that decision before we authorize the contract.
Mhm.
Right. But yeah, so as long as you guys can clarify that with Derek before Thursday's meeting, then we're good to go. And as I said, amend the contract if it needs to be amended to fit the amount of funding we have in place. Okay. And Joe Pavlov, we are totally clear on that $800,000 number.
Excuse me?
We're totally clear on that $804,000 number or whatever it was.
I just went through the budget book, so that's
Okay.
the number that I'm familiar.
Okay.
If there's something that I missed, I can go over with John or Adam.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Can I just jump in
okay.
real quick?
Yeah.
I'll work with John and Scott Livermore to come up with a full financial plan on how we're going to pay for the project. The only other thing I want to be sure that, I know Mr. Biter's new, so just to put this out there, liquid fuels is completely regulated by the state. So anything that you use liquid fuels money for has to be done within the roadway. You can't use it in the park. You can't use it for something of that nature. You have to use it for paving, stormwater, street lighting, traffic signals, or equipment to maintain the roadway. That's the only thing you can use it for. And it's broken out by category, like your major equipment purchases. You're only allowed to use up to $170,000 a year for major equipment purchases. Everything has to be used for those categories set by liquid fuels. So like John said, the road is the perfect thing to use it for.
Right. Now, Adam, as a quick question. So we have 1.7 million in liquid fuel surplus right now?
It's actually 1.7 with this year's allocation that we'll receive in the beginning of March.
That will be surplus, not because we've allocated a bunch of liquid fuels funding for this year. But we will have surplus liquid fuels funding to the tune of 1.7?
Right now we have about $900,000 in surplus.
Okay, got it. So we've allocated most of this year's liquid fuels funding that we'll be receiving.
Yes, we try to budget it all, yes.
Yes. Okay.
The allocation we get this year will probably have, now of course it's depending upon how much salt we buy this year and things of that nature, but We'll probably be somewhere around another 200,000 that will go into the surplus.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So, and then I guess secondary question, what are the regulations like? Could we just say, okay, that whole $1.1 million surplus we're going to put into paving in 2023? Or would that also violate the regulations? Are you only permitted to spend certain amounts of it in certain places?
You can absolutely do that. The only thing they really regulate is the percentage you pay or the percentage you use for your major equipment or the percentage that you use towards salaries.
Mhm.
Everything
Got it.
else is just repair of roadways, lighting on roadways, traffic signals, things of that nature.
Right. Now, of course, it would be foolish for us to go ahead and allocate every single cent of our liquid fuel surplus, because then we wind up in a situation like this somewhere down the road and not have extra money that we could potentially throw at a project. Correct?
Correct.
But that said, that is a viable, that would potentially be a viable use. But yeah, Mr. Biter, this is not random free money we can spend on anything. Like most money the city receives from the federal or the state government, it's earmarked for specific tasks. Right. And I guess to go a little further into that, Mr. Winder, for a sec, for Mr. Biter's benefit, the community development block grant funding that we use for streets can only be specifically spent on streets in low to moderate income neighborhoods.
Correct. It's based upon the income or low to moderate income percentage in certain areas. And it's, the city is blocked off into sections, we'll say, and that's how they base that. It can't be you just choose a group of streets in one area, because there's different sections per that street that become quadrants to say. So that's how it's determined by the state. There's a whole calculation you're required to use, which John's very good at being on top of that, and making sure that we're doing things in those areas. Now, the only thing with CDBG is like the curb ramps, you can do them anywhere because they give access to all individuals with disabilities. It's not just separated to low to moderate income area at that point.
Got it. Because it benefits a community, a protected community. So,
Correct.
same sort of thing. Okay. Okay. Are we all clear then on the decision that's being made for Thursday, whether we're cutting the paving project or augmenting the funding originally allocated for the paving project with additional liquid fuel surplus funds? Right. And then the administration will come to us on Thursday evening, tell us which of those two options they've chosen, and council will move forward from there.
Sounds good.
Presumably,
Yes.
presumably, it'd be nice if you'd tell us which of the two options you've chosen before Thursday evening. For public purposes, we'll review them on Thursday.
We'll get you an answer by the end of today.
All right, awesome. Okay, then can I get a motion to forward this to the full body of council? Or gentlemen, Randy, Eric,
Yeah.
do you have any further questions now that we've had all this discussion?
No, I don't.
No, I think the clarification is important at this point.
Okay. Then we need a motion, I suppose.
I'll make a motion. We pass it to the full body of council with no recommendation.
Okay.
And I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. And yeah, the paving project looks very exciting. Let's just try and make certain exactly how we're conducting it. All right. Moving on then to agenda item number 4, which is any related items. Mr. Pavlak, anyone else in this meeting have any financial issues that they'd like to bring to our attention that haven't specifically been called out on the agenda?
This is Sam with the fire department.
Hey, Sam.
Last night at the ARPA meeting, I brought up about the payment for the 3.2 million for the fire apparatus. That was the contract was signed yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
We have 60 days in order to come up with a funding source. And we are reaching out to a number of different lenders to come back with the with proposals for municipal lease agreements. Everything that we're looking at, it's in the ballpark anywhere between 17% and 28% extra, obviously for the
You mean over the course of the lease agreement or the
right over the life of the agreement.
Right. So the question is, much as former Chief Killian had brought up, whether we want to pull any of the funding from ARPA funds and how much, if so.
Right. Correct.
And you need a immediate answer on that.
Pardon me.
And you're looking for a relatively immediate answer on that question.
Yeah, as soon as possible.
Okay. My suggestion would be, hey, Janice Frank, are you still out there?
I am.
Could you reach out to Adam and get his consent to add that as a discussion item to the council agenda?
Okay. At
We
the
can't-
end or
we can't-
beginning?
They authorize it, but I think that's how we need to begin, right? Is that specific topic? Are we willing to utilize ARPA funding for, versus lending for some percentage of the fire apparatus?
Right. Miss Mealy, just to give you an idea of what we're finding out so far, on a 10-year term at $3.2 million, saying we financed the whole thing, it is roughly $316,000 annual payment.
Uh-huh.
So I believe that's the reason why Chief Ungst is proposing the discussion about the ARPA funds, because that is an excessive burden to put on the budget, which naturally will go to the taxpayer, and in my opinion, would definitely create a tax increase.
Right. I mean, I think we will, my understanding was we were contemplating somewhat splitting the difference, funding a portion of it out of ARPA and funding a portion of it, with a loan that would somewhat burden the general fund. But yeah, I mean, I understand the discussion. If Chief Ongst, if you could send us specific numbers, that would be helpful. I mean, they don't need to be super specific, but say the difference if we fund $1 million with ARPA, if we fund 1.5.
Sure. I can provide those options. Absolutely.
I think that would be helpful to have before we have a discussion about it. Like I said, I'm not certain that it would be any sort of an action item on Thursday's agenda, but it would at least jumpstart the discussion if it's okay with Council President Yoder. And then we could ideally in 2 weeks' time, perhaps give you a formal answer in terms of I actually don't know what it looks like to vote to allocate ARPA funding to a given project, but if that's something that needs to happen, then we could potentially do that 2 weeks out. Okay.
All right. I appreciate it. Thanks for your consideration.
Do any other members of finance have any other suggestions on that, on a way to take action on that I'm not thinking of?
No, but this is the point I had raised to Sam yesterday. I was very concerned as to how we were going to do this. So I appreciate that he brought it up today.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and Sam, I'm sorry, I had a family commitment that I had to leave last night at 8:30, or I would have been there for that part of the discussion. This is the first time hearing of it. But we knew that it was coming down the pike because, like I said, former Chief Killian had raised it as a question. I just didn't realize that we were sort of in the decision-making crux here. For the record, I definitely support taking at least some portion of the money out of the personally. Randy?
Well, the time frame where this had to be paid changed considerably. There might have been some miscommunication or something there. In any case, the 60-day
got it. Window is new.
that affects, it's a tight window. So, we do need to move expeditiously.
Okay. All right, then. Chief Ongst, will it be enough time if we can get you a definitive answer no later than 2 weeks from Thursday? Or is that too long a time frame, and do we need to try and figure out a mechanism for sorting it out for you?
No, that should suffice. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Then we'll just try to work on a streamlined discussion about it this Thursday, and then action if we need to take a formal action on it 2 weeks out. And it's possible that the administration can simply, take that action itself after a brief discussion of council without us needing to do anything formal. But we probably should consider all the ramifications. You will eventually be coming to us for the borrowing, and we all need to be on board with the fact that we're taking however much out of ARPA funds.
Right.
So yeah, we'll need to think of a means of dealing with that. I'll talk to Council President Yoder about that later on today. Okay. Anything further to add on that item?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Then, does anyone else have anything further to add for the good of the order?
No,
Then I would take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
And I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you.